The first laugh came from the fourth row, sharp, careless, a sound that said this place belongs to us. A second chuckle rolled in from the defense table. Then a snort. Boy, look at that, half hidden behind a hand. The gavel struck once, clean as a bell. The room kept laughing. And Judge Malachi Pierce, the first black judge this county had ever seen, did something they did not expect. He smiled, as if he'd heard this tune his whole life and already knew where the music ended. Before we dig deep into this shocking story, kindly hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on your notification bell so you never miss real stories that reveal the darkest truths and biggest betrayals. Briar County had a way of forgetting the parts of history that didn't flatter it. The courthouse, with its white columns and a clock that hadn't worked since the year the factory closed, held a gallery of portraits, all pale faces in oil and gilt frames. Some said the ghosts of former judges whispered precedent through the vents. Who could sit where? Whose voice mattered? How mercy looked when it stared into familiar eyes. The day Judge Malachi Pierce took the bench, the hallway smelled of polish and rain. He'd been sworn in quietly the week before, no ceremony, no banner. He stood tall, dark suit pressed, a tie that used to be his father's looped careful at the throat. He'd moved back home after years in the city, with a resume that made enemies without trying. Federal clerkship, civil rights work, a reputation for not blinking when the room got loud. "You're from here?" the clerk had asked, soft, curious. "Born 2 counties over. Grew up watching this building from the bus stop," Malachi had answered. "I thought it was a museum." He learned quickly that the courthouse had a favorite joke, passed hand to hand like a shared breath. A black judge? In Briar? It lived in smirks, lifted eyebrows, in the way the bailiff introduced him too loudly, as if overpronouncing could make a man smaller. And over it all hummed the case that would define the county for a generation. State versus Harlan and Kate Whittemore, 2 brothers with a father who owned half the storefronts on Main, charged with aggravated assault and manslaughter in the death of Isaiah Brooks, a 20-year-old mechanic whose only crime had been existence in the wrong alley after a homecoming game. Kids being kids, someone had said at the diner. Boys with beer and bad decisions. The words made Malachi's jaw work. He'd once been a boy walking home from a game, too, told by a squad car to remove his hood so the officer could see his face. Now his job was not to remember, but to listen. On the first day of trial, the humidity lay heavy over the gallery, a wet hand on the mouth. The Whittemore family filled the front benches. Mother in pearls, father in a suit too shiny. Their lawyer, Harlan Slate, had the face of a man who'd won in this room more times than he had to ask for it. He glanced at Malachi, with the polite surprise people reserve for a waiter who speaks Latin. "Your Honor," Slate began. "Before we begin, a motion in limine to exclude the..." The courtroom door swung open late and rusted, the hinges scolding. A group of young men slipped in and took seats in the 4th row. Letterman jackets, Whittemore colors. One of them caught the judge's eye, smirked, and whispered something that made the others snicker. The clerk whispered, "All rise," a beat too slow. Malachi didn't raise his voice. "Counsel, your motion?" Slate's words dripped like honey over knives. "The audio recording the prosecution intends to introduce is inadmissible." "It's hearsay stacked on hearsay and the chain of custody." The prosecutor, Assistant DA Leila Moreno, stood small but steady. "The chain is intact. The video and audio were recovered under warrant from the Whittemore warehouse camera system and authenticated by 2 techs. The defense knows this." Malachi took notes with an old pen his mother had given him when he passed the bar. He used it the way other men used a cross. He'd read the briefs by lamplight the night before, the tinny chirp of cicadas bleeding in through his window, the smell of the river thick and living. It was all there. Isaiah's last minutes half captured on a grainy camera, a pickup truck backfiring, a baseball bat lifted, then out of frame. Laughter, a voice saying, "Teach him." Then a long, soft groan. Silence. "We will take the motion under advisement," Malachi said. "For now, seat the jury." From the 4th row came a cough that sounded suspiciously like a laugh. The gavel fell once clear, uncluttered. The courthouse clock, dead for 30 years, might as well have been ticking. Isaiah's mother, Ruth Brooks, clutched the witness rail as if it were the last dry edge of a boat. Her hands were cracked with work, nails pinked at the corners. She spoke not like a mother begging, but like a historian correcting a textbook. "My boy fixed the brakes on Mr. Whitmore's trucks," she said. "He didn't steal, he didn't start fights. He didn't carry anything but a wrench and a prayer. Don't you hand me boys being boys." They were men with time enough to know better. In cross slate softened his voice to a velvet rope. "Mrs. Brooks, you weren't present that night." "No, sir. I was home. But I hear him every night." "That counts?" Someone laughed, short and embarrassed. The judge didn't look up, but his pen stopped moving for a breath. He said, The gallery will remain silent or be cleared." On the morning of sentencing, a new crowd waited, heavier, older. Men who hadn't come to the trial came to see the measure of a man in a robe, to test the rumor that he was a symbol and not a spine. Ruth Brooks brought a photograph of Isaiah taped at the corner. It was nothing fancy. A graduation day sun, a suit that didn't fit right, a smile his friends used to bet on. She read, voice thick and steady. "Your Honor," she said, "I came to this court because I'm a believer. Not just in God I am that, but in rules. In what we write down when we get tired of forgetting. I don't ask for revenge. I don't have time. I ask for the truth that won't move when you push it. I don't want their laughter. I want what the law promised me the first time you raised that gavel." Malachi watched Slate close his eyes for a moment, then reopen them as if the lids were heavy. The Whittemore brothers each took turns speaking. Cade the younger could barely manage a sentence without glancing at his brother. Harlan the elder addressed the judge almost as a colleague. "Sir, I made a mistake. I was drunk. I never meant." Malachi held up a hand. "You may address the court. You may not instruct it." Somewhere in the fourth row, a throat cleared, as if preparing to laugh and thinking better of it. He waited until the whisper in the room died of its own hunger. Then he took off his glasses, folded them, placed them beside the bench as if laying down a weapon he would not need. "When you laughed," he began, and the words surprised them. He had decided not to speak from on high, but level. He let the syllables find the faces. "When you laughed in my courtroom, you weren't laughing at me. You were laughing at the idea that this place could belong to anyone besides you." He did not raise his voice. That was the unnerving part. "I have lived in rooms where laughter was a test," he said. "A way to measure what we thought we could get away with. I have worn a suit to meet a cop who asked to see my hands before my ID. I have watched good mothers take the long way around a neighborhood so their sons would not become a headline. I have read history with a flashlight because the lights went out on purpose." A murmur started like wind rising in pines. He cut it with a look. "This case is not about my biography," he continued. "It is about the law and the life it protects, and the lives it will protect only if the law means the same thing on every street." He listed, then calm clinical, the injuries in the medical examiner's report. He read the timestamps. He read the syllables of the word teach exactly once. He read the statute numbers, their bland brutality, and what they required of him. And then he spoke their sentences. For aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, enhanced by bias motive, you are each sentenced to 15 years in the Department of Corrections. For manslaughter, you are each sentenced to 25 years. The sentences shall run consecutively. You will be eligible for parole as the law allows. You will pay restitution to the Brooks family for funeral costs and lost wages as calculated by this court. You will perform 1,000 hours of community labor post-release, supervised by the court, to be served in the neighborhoods you avoided. You will fund, from your trust, a scholarship in Isaiah Brooks's name for apprentices in the trades mechanics, welders, carpenters for the next 20 years, administered independently. You will attend and you will listen. To the families who have buried sons, not to debate them but to hear them. Someone gasped, high and thin. The elder Whittemore looked as though he'd swallowed ice. Slate made a note he would never read again. The fourth row shifted as if the benches had grown teeth. "I have considered your youth," Malachi said. "I have considered your families. I have considered letters that tell me you are good boys who made a mistake. But a mistake repeated through practice and privilege is not a mistake. It is a choice. It is a curriculum taught by men who thought the law was a fence they built rather than a house we share. He looked at Ruth Brooks. She held the photo softer now, as if the edges had dulled in her hands. This sentence will not bring Isaiah back, he said. Nothing will. But the law is a promise we make to the living. Today I intend to keep it. He lifted the gavel. The wood knocked once, then again, the sound clean as new bone. No one laughed. There are counties where a story is a season, where you feel the weather of a verdict for years. Summer turned to a careful fall. The Whittemore trucks continued to run, but not as smoothly as before. People bought bread at the bakery 2 blocks farther, doing math with their feet. The scholarship fund opened a small application portal with a clean white page. The first recipient, a girl named Cammie with oil under her nails and perfect geometry, cried when she got the letter in her mother's kitchen. Slate filed the appeal he was paid to file. It crawled along the docket like a wounded thing, all arguments predictable as old songs. The appellate court, in a tidy opinion, found no reversible error. Precedent shifted a degree. In law, a degree is a season. At the courthouse, they took down one of the oil portraits. That winter, because a pipe broke and ruined the frame. In its place, temporarily, hung a simple diagram of the courtroom evacuation route. People paused and stared at it all week, as if the instructions for getting out of the building were a kind of map for getting out of themselves. Mr. Coleman, bucket in hand, nodded at Malachi in the corridor. Clean record, he said. Clean enough to eat off? Clean enough to see yourself in. On Sundays, Malachi walked alone by the river with a thermos of coffee. He tried to learn the names of the birds like other men learned the stats of teams. He wrote letters he never sent to a father who'd gone quiet in a hospital. Room with the TV turned too loud. He did not become a celebrity. He slept most nights with the window cracked to hear the cicadas count the hours. Sometimes he dreamed of a gavel that never struck. He would wake with his hand half raised and lower it to his chest, feeling the old pen there, heavy as a promise. Ruth Brooks started volunteering at the vocational school on Thursdays, teaching kids how to balance a ledger and a life. She brought iced tea and a laugh that didn't ask permission. When she passed the courthouse on market days, she looked up at the clock and imagined it working again, the hands moving honestly through time. She decided she didn't need the joke anymore where time stood still. And the 4th row? Well, some boys left town. Some grew quiet. One took a job in a different county and stopped wearing his Letterman jacket. One, this is always how change sneaks in, comes to every scholarship banquet and sits in the back, uninvited, without eating, as if atoning is a posture you practice before you can hold it up to light. They still told jokes in Briar County because people always will, but laughter learned to check itself. To glance at the bench and remember a morning when a man laid down his glasses and did not raise his voice, and still the room turned. When the new year came, the courthouse clerk hung a calendar with a photograph of a field after a stormlight, every blade of grass doing the small work of standing. On the day marked 1 year since sentencing, someone no one ever confessed hung Isaiah's photo in the hallway, just for an hour, right where the sun slanted through the glass. It warmed the paper. It brightened the eyes. People stopped, hands on their grocery lists, and looked. And for a long, clean moment, the building felt like a house they might yet share. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs a reminder that justice isn't a sound. It's a promise kept. And if you're new here, subscribe. There are more true stories coming. The kind that start with a laugh and end with a reckoning.